All right, today we're taking you somewhere pretty special. It's this small, gorgeous island that, at first glance, looks like the perfect, quiet getaway. But what's really going on here is something else entirely. It's the center of this incredible, super important genetics project.
And that brings up a really obvious question, right? Why would anyone go through all the trouble of hauling thousands upon thousands of bees by truck, by boat, all the way out to this remote little island? I mean, that's a ton of work.
Well, the answer is pretty simple and pretty amazing. The whole point is to create a better bee. Now, we're not talking about some kind of Frankenstein monster bee here. This is all about carefully breeding a new generation that's gentle, super productive, and really healthy. And look, in a world where our bee populations are in trouble, these aren't just nice-to-have traits. They're becoming absolutely essential for their survival. So how in the world do they pull this off? Well, to get that, we have to start with the place itself. Because it turns out, this island, it's kind of the secret sauce. And this is Lori Samard. She's the boat captain who makes this whole thing possible, but she's also a volunteer, and her family goes way back on this island. And she just nails it with this quote, right? It's not just some convenient spot for a science experiment, it's a sanctuary. A place that feels special, not just for people, but for the bees too. And what's so wild is how the island's own history kind of accidentally created the perfect home for these bees. It used to be a stopover for the local Chippewa people, then it was settled and cleared for farming, but the farming eventually stopped, and nature just took over again. So now, the whole place is overgrown with all of these wild plants like sumac and sweet clover, which is basically an all-you-can-eat five-star buffet for bees. It's the perfect place for our colony to just thrive.
Okay, so you've got this perfect location, and that just sets the stage for the real mission, breeding what you might call a super bee. So what exactly are they trying to create here? What does a better bee even look like?
So the bees they're working with are a really special type called the buckfast bee. And this isn't some newfangled thing. This strain was first developed more than 100 years ago by a monk, believe it or not, named Brother Adam. He literally dedicated his life to selectively breeding bees for the absolute best traits. The team on Thorah Island, they're carrying on that incredible legacy. At its heart, the whole breeding program is basically a highly targeted matchmaking service for bees. It's all about taking the best qualities from two different parent lines and combining them into one, well, superior bee. Okay, and here's how it breaks down. It's pretty cool. In bees, certain traits come from the dad's side and others come from the mom's. So the male drones that live on the island, they're specifically chosen because their genetics give them traits like gentleness, a low desire to swarm, and they're really productive. Now, the virgin queens that are brought to the island, they carry the genes for what's called hygienic behavior, basically keeping the hive super clean to prevent diseases. So the whole idea is to bring them here so their one and only mating flight is with these pre-selected gentle drones. The end goal? A brand new queen whose kids will have all of these amazing traits combined.
Okay, which brings us to the actual how. How do you guarantee that the right queen mates with the right drone? This is where the island itself becomes the real hero of the story.
See, the island basically acts as a giant natural controlled lab. It's already packed with colonies full of those gentle, productive drones we were talking about. And because it's an island surrounded by water, those are the only males available, period. So when the researchers bring over their virgin queens in these little starter hives, they call them nukes, they know with 100% certainty that any queen who mates is mating with one of their hand-picked drones. It's perfect genetic control, all thanks to a little bit of water. All right, so once the queens have had their mating flight, the really hands-on part of the job kicks in. Now it's time to actually find these newly bred supermoms and get them ready for their new jobs. And this whole process is just so precise. First, the team has to go into each one of those little hives and find the new queen. Once they spot her, she gets a tiny dot of paint on her back. The color changes each year so they know how old she is, and they clip a tiny piece of one wing. Now don't worry, it doesn't hurt her, it just makes her easy for beekeepers to identify later. Then, she's gently put into this little cage with a few helper bees and a little plug of sugar candy to eat. And finally, they put a new unhatched queen cell back into the nuke, and the whole amazing cycle starts all over again. And get this isn't just a one-and-done thing. The team comes back and does this entire harvest process 5 separate times over a single summer. It's an incredibly intense, cyclical operation, all to produce as many of these top-tier queens as they possibly can. So why go through all this intense work? Well, because the ripple effect from this tiny island is absolutely massive. So where do all these queens actually end up?
Meet Rachel Bryans from Monroe Honey. They're one of the key collaborators in this whole program. Her company brings their own virgin queens to the island to get mated, and then they take those incredible new queens back to their main operation, and just like she says, they then use that amazing genetic stock to raise even more queens to sell to beekeepers all over the province.
And the scale of this, it's just mind-blowing. Think about it. Just one partner, Monroe Honey, produces and sells about 3,000 queens every single year. And every one of them can trace her genetics right back to this little island. This isn't just some small academic project. It's having a huge, real-world impact on the entire beekeeping industry.
And who's buying them? Pretty much everyone. We're talking big commercial honey producers all the way down to folks who just have a couple of hives in their backyard. These superior genes for gentler, healthier, more productive bees are spreading throughout the entire beekeeping community in Ontario. It's strengthening the whole bee population, one hive at a time.
So when you step back and look at it, this supposedly isolated island, it's not isolated at all, is it? It's a powerhouse, an engine for genetic improvement that's helping create bee populations better equipped to handle the challenges of our modern world. It really proves that sometimes the biggest, most impactful solutions can come from the smallest, most remote places. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets is nature holding on to, just waiting for us to pay attention, that could help secure the future of our food and maybe even our planet?